Welcome to the video, and today I'm going to be talking about the best and the worst wide receiver cores in the league. This 2023 season has a lot of wide receivers who move teams and a lot of young receivers who I think will blossom. And overall, I'm pretty excited to see how each receiver core does this season. And starting off in the bad tier, we have the Tennessee Titans and the Houston Texans. Neither of these teams really have too much to look forward to in their wide receiver group, except the Titans have Treylon Burks and the Texans have Robert Woods. But overall, I don't see either of these dudes having great seasons. Treylon Burks will probably need a few seasons to actually develop, and I think Robert Woods is getting old and not going to be a great wide receiver one. And looking at the rest of the roster, there's really not much else to look forward to. The Texans have Nico Collins and the Titans have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and I don't think either of them are really going to excel this team in the wide receiver group. So overall, the pass catchers on this team get a bad tier for me. Moving on to the next tier, which is not ideal. This tier has the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals lost DeAndre Hopkins, the Panthers lost DJ Moore, and the rest of their cores aren't too great. Yes, the Panthers got Adam Thielen. Yes, the Cardinals still have Rondale Moore and Marquise Brown, but I don't think these are elite options to have. Behind an old and aging Adam Thielen, which is all the Panthers really have, they have DJ Chark and Terrace Marshall, and neither of them really stick out to me. At least they have Jonathan Mingo, who could have a good season coming in from Ole Miss, but hey, we'll see. And yes, Arizona does have Marquise Brown and Rondale Moore, but then they have an aging Zach Ertz, Greg Dortch, Michael Wilson, who none of these people are really going to make a difference for their team. But that's all for this tier. Let's see who's in could surprise, but at the moment mediocre. We have the Green Bay Packers, New York Giants, Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, Baltimore Ravens, New York Jets, and the Indianapolis Colts. These are all teams with receiver groups where I just look and I'm like, but you know what? They have some upside to them. The Packers' whole receiving group is first or second years. The Giants have some pretty mediocre guys who showed flashes and then a young receiver in Jalen Hyatt. Yes, the Falcons look all right with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, but other than that, no one else to really pass to. Now, the Saints are a team I think could move up here. They have Chris Olave, possibly Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, and Juwan Johnson. Chris Olave looked amazing last season and was probably the second best rookie receiver. Michael Thomas has always been good, but just might not play. And Rashid Shaheed, a lot of people are talking about him. He could be good this season, but we just don't know. The reason I have them this low is just because I don't know if Michael Thomas will really play, and Rashid Shaheed is a gamble. This is exactly why I have them in the could surprise, but at the moment mediocre. Baltimore is definitely another team that can move up. That's why they're in the could surprise. They have Mark Andrews, who has always been reliable, OBJ, who's coming off of injury and not playing for a year, Zay Flowers, who's a rookie, and Rashad Bateman, who I think is a third year. Obviously, Mark Andrews is that guy, but everyone else on this team could possibly have a good or a bad season. I think they just don't deserve to be in the tier above this, but they definitely could surprise. Next is the New York Jets with Garrett Wilson, Allen Lazard, Mecole Hardman, and Tyler Conklin. Yes, Garrett Wilson is amazing and probably a top 10 receiver. And yes, Allen Lazard was a wide receiver 1 last season, but I'm really not too high on Allen Lazard, even as a Packers fan. Him and Rodgers do have chemistry, and I do think it'll work because Rodgers is a very good quarterback, but Lazard really isn't great. Garrett Wilson is really the reason why this wide receiver core looks so good, and that's why I have them in the could surprise. And next we have Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs, and Jelani Woods of the Indianapolis Colts. Michael Pittman is good, but I think he's only in the top 20 to top 25 range. Alec Pierce is a decent wide receiver 2 to have, and Josh Downs is a rookie who I think could do alright. I don't think this core is better than mediocre, so that's why they're here. Moving on to balanced but lacking top-end talent. In this tier, there's the New England Patriots, Detroit Lions, Cleveland Browns, Pittsburgh Steelers, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Chicago Bears. I think all of these wide receiver groups are pretty talented, but just there's not that one guy that puts them over. I like what the Patriots did with adding Juju and Gesicki, as well as having Devontae Parker, Hunter Henry, and Nelson Aguilar. Don't get me wrong, this is a very balanced and deep wide receiver core, but there isn't one guy that really makes me think this receiver core is that good. And I think that's super important to having a great wide receiver core, so that's why they're here. The Lions look good with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Marvin Jones Jr., Brock Wright, and Sam Laporta. While Amon-Ra St. Brown looks amazing, I don't think he's one of those guys that pushes them over the top. This team is very balanced and has nice targets for Jared Goff to throw to, but it's nothing amazing, so that's why they're here. And next up is the Browns. I could see some of you arguing that Amari Cooper is the one that pushes them over the top, but no, not really. Behind Amari Cooper, they have Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and David Njoku, who, hey, are pretty good targets to have, but again, nothing amazing, just balanced overall, lacking top-end talent, exactly why they're here. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they have Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, just signed Allen Robinson, and still have Pat Freiermuth. Don't forget, they also drafted Darnell Washington. A very, very good and balanced wide receiver core, but nothing really sticking out to me. Deontay Johnson is a pretty good wide receiver 1. George Pickens looked great last season. Pat Fryermuth is pretty reliable, and they also got Darnell Washington, who could do good. The addition of Allen Robinson is nice for a young second-year QB, but in general, nothing really sticks out to me, and that's why they're here. Next is Jacksonville, who has Christian Kirk, is getting back Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, and Evan Ingram. Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk worked really well last season. And yes, they're getting Calvin Ridley back, who looked amazing last time he played with the Falcons. But I don't really know fully how to feel about Ridley. I don't know how hard he's been training with his time off. I don't know if he'll improve or get worse with his time off. We'll just have to see. And then Zay Jones and Evan Ingram aren't too bad. Lastly is the Chicago Bears, who I think added really good people around Justin Fields. This season they added DJ Moore, last season they added Chase Claypool, and they still have Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. Very balanced. I think DJ Moore is good, but just not a kind of guy who will push them over the top. The next tier we have is not amazing, but can't complain. Washington Commanders, Denver Broncos, LA Rams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, LA Chargers, and the Dallas Cowboys. All of these cores have great guys that you can't complain about having on your team, but none of these wow me compared to the teams above them. Let's start off talking about the Commanders, who arguably have a top 15 receiver in Terry McLaurin, have a good second year in Jahan Dotson, and a nice wide receiver 3 in Curtis Samuel. Their tight end is Logan Thomas, who I don't think is great, but he's alright. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson are a great duo in my opinion, and Curtis Samuel's a nice wide receiver 3. Logan Thomas is a serviceable tight end, and overall that makes this team good and something you can't complain about. The Broncos have Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Greg Dulcich. They have one of the best 1 and 2s in the league with Jerry Jeudy and Sutton, a good wide receiver 3 in Tim Patrick, and their tight ends But having Jerry Jeudy and Sutton is what keeps them from the tier below. Now the Rams are a little bit arguable. While they have Cooper Kupp, everyone around is kinda Van Jefferson is a decent 2, Ben Skronik is kinda and Tyler Higbee is an alright tight end. The reason they aren't in the tier above, which is amazing number 1 surrounded by decent second options, is because I don't even think these second options are very, good. But Cooper Kupp is definitely enough to push them into the can't complain tier. Next is the Bucks, who have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, and Cade Otton. Mike Evans is amazing, Chris Godwin is amazing, Russell Gage is alright, and Cade Otton did alright last season. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are definitely the reason they're here. Russell Gage and Cade Otton don't add too much. And now for the Chargers. I could see you argue that they're in the all-around elite tier, but I see Keenan Allen regressing. I see Mike Williams regressing. And then behind them, they have Quentin Johnson, who's a rookie. They have a tight end in Gerald Everett, who is pretty good, and one of the deepest wide receiver cores in the league with Jalen Guyton and Joshua Palmer coming off the bench. And like I said before, the reason I don't have them in the all-around elite tier is because I see Keenan Allen and Mike Williams regressing. And the last team we're talking about in this tier is the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb looked amazing last season. I think Brandon Cooks is a good addition, but nothing crazy in my eyes, and Michael Gallup is a nice number 3. Their tight end is Jake Ferguson, who's a downgrade from Schultz, but still not too bad. I really like CeeDee, and I do think Brandon Cooks won't have a bad season, but I do see him regressing, like I said, with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Moving on to the second to last tier, amazing number 1s surrounded by decent second options. This tier has the Kansas City Chiefs, followed up by the Buffalo Bills, Las Vegas Raiders, and Minnesota Vikings. The Chiefs obviously have Travis Kelce, but behind that is MVS, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. None of these guys are magnificent players, but they are decent options for Mahomes to throw to. The Bills have Diggs, Davis, Kahil Shakir, and Dawson Knox. Diggs is obviously their number 1 guy here. I don't think Gabe Davis was as good as some people think he was. The reason he even had that good of performances last season is because Josh Allen. Khalil Shakir barely played last season, but will be getting a bigger role this season, and Dawson Knox was a pretty good tight end last season. They also drafted Dalton Kincaid, who I think is a great addition. The Vikings number 1 is the Opoi Jay Jettas, and behind them is a rookie in Jordan Addison, a great wide receiver 3 in KJ Osborne, and a good tight end in TJ Hawkinson. The lack of a very good wide receiver 2 is what puts them in this tier, because Jordan Addison is just a rookie. We'll see how he does, and KJ Osborne was alright. Moving on to the final tier, which is all around elite. And in the tier with the best of the best wide receiver groups, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins, Seattle Seahawks, San Francisco 49ers, and Philadelphia Eagles. I see the Bengals as pretty obviously the best receiver group in the league. Having Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Burrow all on the same team sounds pretty deadly. And for good reason, because it is. Jamar Chase is a top 5 receiver in the league, T. Higgins is the second best wide receiver 2 in the league, and Tyler Boyd is probably the best wide receiver 3 in the league. At tight end, they have a young Irv Smith who isn't amazing, but is still a decent target. This causes for the most deadly receiver group in the league, and that's why they're up here. Next is the Dolphins, who probably have a better 1 and 2 than the Bengals. At the receiver 1, they have Tyreek Hill. At the receiver 2, they have Jalen Waddle. Behind them at receiver is Cedric Wilson, and at tight end is Durham Smythe. While Cedric Wilson is a good third option, the whole reason they're up here is because of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Just too deadly to stop. After the Dolphins is the Seattle Seahawks. They have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, JSN, and Noah Fant. That might be overall the most balanced in the league. They have a top 15 wide receiver 1, probably a top 5 wide receiver 2, and arguably the best rookie wide receiver in the class. Noah Fant is also a great tight end to have on your team. He's just outshined by the rest of the talent on the team. Following them up is the San Francisco 49ers. They have Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, and George Kittle. In my personal opinion, I think if George Kittle didn't have to deal with injuries every single season, he would be the best tight end in the league. Now, it is a very bold take to make, but I do think that his skill, even taking into account what Travis Kelce has done, is the best in the league. It kind of makes me sad that he's so riddled with injuries. But off of Kittle, they still have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel can do it all. Didn't look amazing last season, but I think we'll step it up again this season. And Brandon Ayuk really showed flashes last season. I think he'll do it again this season. And lastly is the NFC champs, the Eagles. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Quez Watkins, and Dallas Goedert is a deadly core. AJ Brown top 10, Devonta Smith heading into his 3rd season, which I think he'll even improve again in. And Quez Watkins is a nice wide receiver 3. Dallas Goedert is also a really nice, reliable tight end to throw to. Probably a top 5 to 7 tight end in the league. There's a reason this team made it to the Super Bowl. That's because the whole team is so talented and the wide receiver core is one of the strongest groups on the team. But that's it for the list. I hope you enjoyed watching. Tell me what you agreed and disagreed with in this video. Make sure you check out the last video I made, which was about Jordan Love, and I'll catch you in the next one.